Hi everybody, I'm Dennis Daly. I spent 20 years with United Press International, most of it with the old UPI Radio Network. And my favorite assignment was going on the road producing and hosting American Montage. It was an hour-long weekly program. Now here's an edited version of one of those shows. Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's American Montage. I'm going to have to talk kind of quietly because we are coming to you initially from a great big beautiful room in one of the prettiest hotels I've ever been in my life. It is the Gleneagles Resort, and we are coming to you this week from Scotland, and the music is coming from a wonderful aggregation called the BBC Big Band. They are going to recreate the sound of the first remote broadcast of music the BBC ever did back in 1924, and it was from this room in the Gleneagles Hotel. So we're on the road in Europe for our second annual trip overseas on this week's American Montage. You may remember a couple of months ago a woman we've interviewed a lot on American Montage, Mariana Fieldhoppen, who is a travel expert for Avis, said you've got to go to Scotland, and I want to arrange it for you to go to a wonderful place called Gleneagles. That is where we are this week. Tucked away in a little bitty tiny town in Scotland is the most wonderful, beautiful hotel, golf. Well, there are so many things to do here, including having a hawk land on your wrist and then fly off again. It's a magic place. And when you walk in, a tall, genteel man with a beautiful British accent, his name Tony Herdman, is there at the concierge desk. I sat down and talked to Tony about the wonderful hotel and spa that is Gleneagles.
It was built by the Caledonian Railway Company and started in 1913. And it was built specifically to attract the travelling public, which in those days were the wealthy. And the idea of Donald Matheson, who was then the managing director of the Caledonian Railway Company, was to build a Highland palace based around golf, with the very good idea of having them travel on his railway line, stay in his hotel, and play on his golf course. And that's as it has been. It's been the Railway Hotel. It was then taken over by LMS, but in fact the work on the hotel took a long time to complete because the First World War intervened. And it lay, believe it or not, without a roof on, this hotel, just the basic walls with the Scottish weather getting in and the wildlife, pigeons, for 9 years until it started being rebuilt again in 1922. The golf courses opened in 1920, but the hotel itself opened in 1924. And it instantly achieved sort of a recognition amongst the wealthy and amongst the socialites of the time as being somewhere to be seen. And so in the 1920s and 30s, this was very much the place to come and play golf. And its reputation has never really sort of run down since then. During the Second World War, it was a military hospital. And after the war, the railway companies were nationalised, and it became British Transport Hotels right up to 1982. Now, you ask, is it a year-round? Believe it or not, right up to 1982, this hotel used to close for the winter. It closed from October through March, because golf was the only thing people could do here. But when Maggie Thatcher's first privatisation occurred, which was the privatisation of the British Transport Hotels, this and the others you've named in Scotland, one of which is also the Turnberry Hotel, the other three, there were four great railway hotels in Scotland, were all privatised and taken into private ownership. This hotel was bought by an Edinburgh consortium, which then was bought by Bell's, then United Distillers, and now Guinness. So Guinness are the owners.
We have a fellow in the United States, Henry Flagler, who was a great railroad builder, but his way of tying the two together was to build hotels. We have the popularity of Florida, the Miami Beach area. All of that was the result of his building hotels down there and then building a railroad to get there.
Oh, well, this was, the railroad was already here, but the people weren't coming to Scotland because there really wasn't anywhere for them to stay in Scotland. Golf was very much the up-and-coming thing at the time in the Edwardian days. And the wealthy, remember, these are really the wealthy who travelled, weren't going to stay in basic little hotels around the place. They wanted somewhere rather smart to stay. And this was the place that was built for them.
So, Tony, what is it like here? We're coming up on fall. Just as in the States, the weather can be very changeable this time of year. I can imagine that not only are there gorgeous winter activities, but this must be beautifully decorated at Christmas time.
Oh, yeah, so Christmas is a wonderful season, but actually we deliberately don't fill the hotel at Christmas because we want people to have space to really enjoy themselves. Hogmanay, however, now that's a different thing. We are fully booked out for Hogmanay, even for the year 2000, as you would imagine. Hogmanay is the Scottish New Year. It's a very much more important celebration than Christmas. Believe it or not, the Scots didn't celebrate Christmas until the turn of the century. Christmas was just a non-event in terms of public holidays. Hogmanay, or the New Year and New Year's Day, have always been the highlight of the year for the Scots.
Well, now, suppose a person has the wherewithal to get here. I have yet to take the tour. What am I going to see today?
Right. Well, since 1982, a vast amount of money has been put in by Guinness into this hotel to make it into a year-round, not just golf hotel.
Terry Waldron was the nice lady who arranged our stay at Gleneagles. She invited me to that BBC concert. You may have heard the band warming up at the beginning of the program, recreating the sound of the 1920s when Gleneagles first opened. I asked Terry how people who might be listening to American Montage, even in very small towns, can find out about tour packages for hotels in Europe, places such as Gleneagles and other places where it is so much fun to go and just get away.
The best way really is from going into your travel agent, not necessarily a travel agent that deals with, the mass holidays and vacations, but try and find a small travel agent who can specialise in individual hotels, also leading hotels of the world. We're a member of Leading Hotels of the World, and if you call them, they'll also give you all the information you need, and they can put you directly in touch with us as well. The other way to find out about Gleneagles, actually, is on the internet. We have our own website, which is simply gleneagles.com, and we're actually about to launch a new site in the next couple of weeks.
Let's talk a little bit more about finding out about things. Travel agents, I have always thought, were the world's great undiscovered resource. So many people tend to think they charge extra when indeed they are agents for the airlines and places such as yourself. I have found in shopping around in the past that quite often there are what are called shoulder seasons. There are times to go to places when the weather may be a little less than perfect, but yet they're not charging the high rate. Can you treat that issue?
Yeah, we have shoulder seasons at Gleneagles. The place I would go to find out about shoulder seasons is to the Tourist Board, Scottish Tourist Board, or the British Tourist Authority. They'll be the best qualified probably to tell you about what's available and also what's going on during the shoulder seasons, because the thing not to forget is that it's not that nothing happens in the shoulder season and everything closes down. For example, in Scotland this year in October there's a whisky festival, which is traditionally the shoulder season for Scotland. So there are other things that happen outside of the peak season for tourists to enjoy and for visitors to Scotland to enjoy. But Scotland, not being Scottish and actually loving Scotland like I do, Scotland for me is perfect at any time of the year because each season is so different. I mean, just the walks and the scenery and the people, and the same for Gleneagles. I mean, you come to Gleneagles any time of the year with all the facilities that we have, the off-road driving, the falconry, the clay target shooting school and the equestrian fishing, and it just goes on and on. But outside those facilities, we're based right in the centre of Perthshire, which is the gateway to the Highlands, and we're an hour from Glasgow, an hour from Edinburgh, we're 40 minutes from Dundee, we're 2.5 hours from Inverness, so we're really ideally located to get from, right in the centre to get to East Coast, West Coast, and as far up as Inverness and even further north for day trips.
Well, Terry, you have a very special place here, and thanks for your hospitality, and thanks for inviting us here.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure having you.
Well, it looks as though the BBC Big Band is starting its concert here at Gleneagles, creating the sound first heard from this marvelous hotel back in 1924. My special thanks to Mariana Fieldhoppen and everyone at Avis Car Rental, and especially to Mariana for suggesting to Gleneagles that they host us on what was the most marvelous vacation trip of my life. Also fun in Glasgow, Edinburgh, and London, and let's do it again sometime. And there you have it, another edited episode of one of the American Montage programs prepared for the UPI Radio Network back in the 1980s and 90s. I'm Dennis Daly. Thanks for listening. Thanks for going with me this week. and check YouTube for more American Montage programs.